Welcome to a new season of the South African Rally Raid Championship, the most exciting form of motor racing in the country, and the only place you can see the fearsome Dakar Rally monsters compete on local soil. This is round 1, the Nkomazi 400, and all the action is brought to you by Toyota, Ford and Pirelli. This is it. The spectacular South African Rally Raid Championship is back, and its first stop, the town of Malelane. This is the domain of the Horns, Johan Sr., his wife Leonie, and his 2 sons Johan Jr. and Vanna, who race in the SARRC, as well as their brother Francois. The Horns have been synonymous both with the sport of rally raid racing, as well as the town of Malelane, where they've sponsored the Nkomazi 400 for many years. This year, however, would turn out to be a bittersweet return to the calendar for the Lowveld town, which hasn't featured as part of the SARRC for the past 6 years. Sweet because Malelane was back on the calendar, but immeasurably bitter and sad as Johan Horn Sr. passed away suddenly on the Saturday of the race. He will be sorely missed by the entire SARRC community, and our sincere condolences go to his entire family and friends. But as we are sure Johan would have wanted, the spectacle of SARRC racing continued in Malelane. This year we'll be changing things up as far as the TV broadcast is concerned. Instead of bringing you the action all in one go across all classes, this time around we're going to bring you the action class by class, kicking off with Class T1. This class has seen incredible battles since its inception, with more crews making the step up to Class T1 for 2023. These battles were set to not only continue, but possibly grow even more intense. The man with the 2022 crown and a massive target on his back is defending champ Evan Basson.
Yeah, it's quite a bit of nerves. I think it's our 3rd season, and I think this year we just got to try to defend that championship. I think that will be our strategy.
Basson will have to contend not only with his familiar foes, but also with young gun Jaden Els, who made the move from Class T to T1 for 2023. So those are just some of the key players. Let's look at the Class T1 action, starting with the Pirelli qualifying race, which took place on the Friday of the Nkomazi 400 weekend. The qualifier was set over a distance of 67 kilometers and would be used to determine the overall starting orders for the race. 2 race loops of 170 kilometers each would follow on the Saturday, but first the qualifying race. 10 Class T1 crews completed the Pirelli qualifying race, with the top 5 split by less than 5 minutes. The first of the class debutants staked his claim as the 6th fastest car, a fine start for Minute and Snyman in their Toyota Hilux. Ahead of them came the father and son pairing of Johan and Sean van Staden in a Renault Duster, as the 5th of the top 5. They were beaten by Johan de Bruin and Gerard Schutte in a red-lined Revo, who came home 33 seconds before the van Stadens. Which brings us to the top 3. Former motorbike racer Nick Pinard partnered with Carl Swanepoel in another red-line Revo, went 3rd fastest, trailing the crew in 2nd place by just under a minute. And that crew, Jaden Els and Alvin Fonk in their SVR. A stunning performance on class debut for Els, finishing just 48 seconds off the pace, set by defending champions Evan Basson and Leander Pipe's Pinard in their Toyota Hilux. And here's confirmation of Basson and Pinard taking pole position, ahead of Els and Fonk, and Pinard and Swanepoel. But that was only qualifying. The real race, all 330 kilometers of it, would only take place on the Saturday of the return of the famed Nkomazi 400. It was time to tackle the full route that consisted of much of what the crews encountered during qualifying, as well as a long and narrow mountain section, with huge cliffs and drop-offs never far away. German driver Jürgen Schroeder with Stuart Gregory alongside him were the first ones to call it a day when their Nissan Navara was forced to the sidelines. And not long after, they were joined by Class T1 debutants Jeff Minute and Gerard Snyman in the hydro power equipment Toyota Hilux, who failed to complete their first event since joining this competitive class. There were lots of eyes following the progress of youngster Jaden Els, now with the experienced Alvin Fonk beside him. But his race was unfortunately short-lived thanks to a flat tire or two and a few technical niggles. Class T1 is an ultra-competitive environment to be in, so sometimes just to reach the finish is a fantastic accomplishment. And here in Malalan, that's exactly what the Redline Motorsport brother pairing of Philip and Nicholas Botha in their VK56. And speaking of brothers, Team Hilux Rally Raid brothers Fushia and Bantus Blickno made the shortest trip down the N4 from their home in Witbank to Malalan, as they started only their second season in the sport of rally raid racing. These two are as tough as they come, and even this little encounter with Mother Nature and gravity couldn't prevent them from recording a finish, albeit down in 7th place. They were beaten to the line by the visiting Dutch pairing of Dave Klaassen and Tessa Ruth in a Redline VK50, who are getting faster and faster with every visit to South African shores. The SARRC is truly becoming a popular race for Europeans, with yet another European driver ending the tough Nkomazi 400 in the Class T1 mix. German Daniel Schroeder is, however, no stranger to South Africa, and together with Navi Ryan Bland, the pairing would have been satisfied with a 5th place finish. Someone who would have seen it all over the years is Johan van Staden. The veteran driver, now with his son Sean reading the notes, upgraded his KEC Racing Renault Duster to Class T1 for the 2023 season. And although missing out on a top 3 in qualifying, the father and son pairing soon moved into the Class T1 lead early on in the race. The joy was short-lived though, as they first lost 5th and 6th gears, which slowed them down a touch. But as much as losing 4-wheel drive and only having 2-wheel drive is not what you want in a rally raid race. They got it fixed at the halfway mark and managed to reach the end in 4th. That left us with the race for the Class T1 podium positions. All 3 steps were still available, and these were the men battling for glory. Pole setters Evan Besson and Leander Pienaar were regarded as the favourites in their Team Hilux Rally Raid Hilux. But Redline Motorsport also had 2 Revo race cars in the mix, in the form of former motorcycle racer Nick Pienaar, with Carl Swanepoel reading the notes, and Pretoria businessman Johan de Bruin with the experienced Gerard Schutte in the hot seat. The Nkomazi 400 would have been a home race for Besson, who flew out of the blocks, but the local turf was not too kind to the man from Komatipoort, just a few kilometers further down the N4. Their Hilux seemed to suffer from every single possible puncture, and that on the first loop. The tally ended on 4 flat tires, but in a great display of sportsmanship, both his rivals, Pienaar and de Bruin, stopped to lend the stricken Hilux a spare wheel or two. With Besson finally reaching the end in 3rd, it meant that Pienaar and de Bruin were left to battle it out for Class T1 honours. It got very close at times, with mere seconds separating the 2 Redline Revos. In the end, it all came down to just 71 seconds, and that after more than 7 hours worth of racing. Pienaar was the one who had to settle for 2nd, as de Bruin claimed his 2nd consecutive Class T1 victory, to go with his win in Paris at the end of the 2022 season. The pair was happy, to say the least. Here's the confirmation of de Bruin's 71-second victory over Pienaar, with pre-race favourite Besson coming home in 3rd. And this is what it's all about. The sweet taste of success on the victory podium, and champagne that de Bruin and Schutte surely enjoyed.
To come out on top after this weekend, it was an extremely hard race. It was the toughest I've ever had in my life. Yeah, what a feeling.
Next up, we move over to Class T, a small but very tough field featuring some big names, including newcomers Joandre and Nico Nienaber. Class T has seen some changes over the years, changing from the premier class of the sport to a more accessible, cost-effective entry to rally raid racing. The Nkomazi 400 saw just 2 entries to the class, with the old hands fending off the newbies, in the form of Nico and Joandre Nienaber, who made their SARRC debut in Malalan. The two crews blasted their way into the Pirelli qualifying race, but the more experienced Ford Ranger crew of Hendrik and Heinrich du Plessis came through to take the win. Their time was 1 hour, 2 minutes and 54 seconds, while the Nienaber's brought their King Price Renault Duster home 7 minutes and 9 seconds behind them. And this makes it official. The du Plessis pairing pipping the Nienaber pairing by 7 minutes and 9 seconds during the qualifying race. Time for the Class T Warriors to tackle the tough race route of the Nkomazi 400. Brothers Nico and Joandre Nienaber are by no means newcomers, as they have been campaigning regular rallies for many years. But the Nkomazi 400 was their first taste of national rally raid racing. Unfortunately, their debut was short-lived, as they failed to finish the racing loops in their King Price Renault Duster. This meant that Hendrik and Heinrich du Plessis were in a perfect position to sit back, enjoy themselves and the beautiful scenery while racing to Class T victory in their Ford Ranger. There were not many names on the Class T leaderboard at the end of the race, but a victory in any round of the SARRC is hard to come by, especially considering the father and son survived 2 punctures and a small fire to earn a well-deserved victory. And so the victory champagne was enjoyed by father and son from the top step of the winner's podium in Malalan.
It feels good. Just wish that there was a bit more competition. But we're blessed.
We'll get back to the final production class late in the show. But now let's shift our attention to the special vehicle category, starting off with the highly competitive crews in Class G. Class G, also known as the side-by-sides or sideys, has become one of the premier feeder classes for the SARC. Not that the guys in this class pull any punches. As a matter of fact, the last few championships have been as close as they can, with Werner Mostert emerging victorious more often than not. This year, however, there would be no chance of Werner adding to his titles, as it was time for his son Ian to, quite literally, take the wheel.
Yes, very exciting. So this year I'm going to drive and my dad will be navigating for us, which will be very fun. The role swap is quite challenging for both of us, but I'm sure we'll do great.
As it turned out, all 4 crews completed the Pirelli qualifying race, though Ewald van Rensburg and Johan Skippers lost 17 minutes and 8 seconds to the leaders, while Ian Mostert went 3rd fastest on the day. He had Francois Neil de Witt ahead of him, who were in turn trounced by the experienced Glenn Theron and Craig Galvin. Their winning margin, 6 minutes and 6 seconds. And here's confirmation of Theron's win in the Pirelli qualifying race, followed by the de Witts and Mosterts. But qualifying is exactly that, qualifying. The Nkomazi route would prove to be a tough challenge for these pocket rocket machines in Class G. Van Rensburg and Skippers were initially in the middle of this battle, but they got stuck in Loop 1 and were forced to settle for an eventual 3rd place. This meant that the battle for the class win would turn out to be a battle between Motonetics teammates Glenn Theron and Craig Galvin and the Mosterts, with Ian doing the driving duties after father Vanna swapped the steering wheel for the roadbook. It was a battle of epic proportions that was ultimately decided by just 70 seconds, after more than 8 hours worth of racing. When the flag was waved, it was the Mosterts who came out on top to claim the first Class G victory of 2023. There it is, the 72nd or 1 minute and 10 second winning margin in favour of the Mosterts over teammates Theron and Galvin, with Van Rensburg and Skippers rounding out the top 3. And this is what the father and son pairing had to say after the taste of victory bubbly from the top step. What was it like giving directions to your son?
Quite difficult at the beginning. I must say it was terrifying actually, but we got settled in.
Onto the monstrous Class A special vehicles, where Tim Howes and Gary Campbell are looking to defend their title. These open-wheel machines are super spectacular in the right conditions, but the tight and winding sections of the Nkomazi 400 might prove tough for cars of this size. At the same time, the field had been reduced to just 3 runners, with class stalwart Sandra Labuskachny-Jonk and husband Jaco sitting this one out. This meant that simply finishing the race would put you on the podium, but Howes was keen on getting his campaign off to a good start.
I suppose there's a little bit more pressure, but you know, I always put a bit of pressure on myself and just try and do as best as I can. So that's we'll do it again this year.
The three crews set off to conquer the Pirelli qualifying race on the Friday of the race weekend. And Haas certainly got his wish when the defending champion, again partnered by Gary Campbell, topped the charts. Bierman and Visser came home in second place, 4 minutes and 40 seconds behind the winners, with Dupree and Hutting losing 13 minutes and 49 seconds to Haas and Campbell after the Farmers Meat crew stopped to assist a fellow competitor who had gotten stuck in a mud hole along the way.
Yeah, we had a clean run, unfortunately just caught up in some dust, but I think that's the same for everyone. So we got to the finish in one piece and we're very happy.
And here are the numbers. The qualifying race saw Haas take pole, followed by Bierman and Dupree. Next up, the main event. And in the main event of the special vehicle category, it was none other than Tim Howes and Gary Campbell in their Bad Spec 4 who enjoyed an excellent run to claim the first overall and Class A win on their way to defending their title. They finished in a time of 7 hours, 17 minutes and 9 seconds with their closest rival Loert Dupree and Rickus Hutting in the Farmers Meat Striker second in Class A. And the last team at the finish after losing lots of time with gearbox problems. So Haas starts 2023 the same way he ended 2022, on top of the Class A standings ahead of Dupree.
It's actually probably the oldest car in the lineup, but it's tough and it's strong, so it can handle all the rough stuff, and yeah, we're very chuffed.
The big boys of Class T1+. This year, the categories included the former T1.2, making the entry list bigger and better than ever before. You can ensure it's going to be as exciting as ever. And speaking of the entry list, the names on it read like a veritable who's who of the world of SARRC. There's a former Dakar winner, various former national champions and other movers and shakers all over the show. Let's hear from the former Dakar winner who also happens to be the defending champion, TGRSA's Janelle de Villiers.
It was nice to get another championship done. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, the Oaks are going to be pushing hard. Everybody's going to be pushing hard.
His biggest challenge is sure to come from within his own camp, with teammate and multiple former champion Henk Lategan aiming to take back the crown he lost in 2022.
Yeah, so the nice thing is we start the season all on the same footing, the same amount. We all start at zero.
NWM Ford Castrol driver Lance Woolridge was upbeat about the upcoming season, especially with the new co-driver beside him in the Ranger.
It's a new year for me. I've got Kenny Gilbert in the nav seat with me. He's new to cars, he's not new to rally raid. He's got a lot of international experience.
The name Berthold is synonymous with rally raid racing in South Africa, with Gary proudly flying the Renogen flag at present. Now with Henry Cohen navigating, Berthold had made the leap from Class T1 to T1+, and was looking forward to getting into the new machine. But Berthold wasn't the only one to move to Class T1+. He'd be joined by the experienced duo of Horst Prinsloo and Andre Vermeulen, who would also be making their class debut. And then there was Chris Visser, himself a former champion. The burly cattle farmer has campaigned both a Ford Ranger and Toyota Hilux in the past, but he'd be making his Class T1+ debut in nothing other than a Redline Revo. Finally, the numbers in Class T1+ was bolstered by the lads from the former Class T1.2, which catered for two-wheel drive buggies that conformed to the FIA spec, who now rejoined the fight in Class T1+. Four of these monsters would be on the starting grid in Malalan. So there you have it, some of the biggest names in the sport taking on round one of the 2023 season in a variety of Class T1+ machines, both new and less new. Here's how the action unfolded. We start with the Pirelli qualifying race, where the top 8 crews were separated by less than 5 minutes in the end. Clearly this is a competitive class where the pace is extremely hot. Chris Visser and Blikkie Sventer went 8th fastest, while Horst Prinsloo and Andre Vermeulen posted the 7th quickest time, just 3 minutes and 40 seconds behind the winners. 6th place went to Woolridge and Gilbert, while TGRSA's Guy Bottrell and Simon Vasey-Lau were 5th on the qualifier. They had Brian Baragwanath and Leonard Kramer in the Century Racing CR6 just 23 seconds ahead of them in 4th. But then we get to the sticky bit, where the top 3 positions slug things out. Third step of the quali podium belonged to NWM Castrol Ford's Gareth Woolridge and navigator Boyd Dreyer, while veterans Janelle de Villiers and Dennis Murphy brought their TGR SA Hilux home just 1 minute and 17 seconds behind the leaders. And the men of the moment, none other than the men on the hunt for their crown from 2021, TGR SA's Henk Lategan and Brett Cummings. The pair were home in 56 minutes and 47 seconds, clearly showing their intent for the weekend.
Everybody was saying it's quite tight and twisty, narrow and difficult, and it's more than I expected even.
Let's take another look at those numbers. At the end of the Pirelli qualified was Lategan and Cummings in the lead, 1 minute and 17 seconds ahead of de Villiers and Murphy. Woolridge and Dreyer were the first of the Fords. Race day dawned, and with it a shake-up as far as the results of the Class T1 Plus qualifying was concerned. It turned out that Lance Woolridge and Kenny Gilbert were much faster than what the initial stopwatch said. The top 10 crews therefore had to do a redraw to determine the respective starting positions. It's 2 loops of around 170 k's each here in this beautiful town, and in the end, the first winner of the first race of the new season will be crowned. Under normal circumstances, Lategan's decision would have been a risky one, but things weren't quite normal at the Nkomazi 400. Things were tough and challenging, but these are the country's best drivers and the country's best racing machines. A fantastic recipe for top-class rally raid action. Unfortunately for Century's Brian Baragwanath and Leonard Kramer, they didn't have much part of it, as engine trouble forced them to the sidelines early on. And after having high hopes of fighting for a top spot finish, Lance Woolridge's hopes quite literally went up in flames when a loose pipe caused an engine fire under the hood of the NWM Ford Castrol Ranger. Woolridge managed to extinguish the flames but suffered a bit of carbon monoxide poisoning in the process. We'll catch up with his condition in a moment. So the last of the Class T1 Plus finishers was rookie Namibian driver Loic Batfield and Navi Rodney Burke in the Century CR6. They were beaten to the line by another Class T1 Plus debutant in the form of Vos Prinsloo and Andre Vermeulen in their new Ford Ranger. Prinsloo was fast, but lost valuable time due to an alternator belt that came off and encountering some traffic along the way. The pure fact that Gary Berthold and new for him co-driver Henry Kern is now also campaigning in Class T1 Plus is proof of just how popular the pinnacle of SA Rally Raid racing has become. The veteran driver fought his way through a few teething problems to record an 8th place finish, around 4 minutes behind 7th place finishers Diewold van Breda and Stompie Maynard in one of the monster CR6 machines. Speaking of these monsters, Lance Strathui and co-driver Adrian Ritz raced their way into 6th overall in the King Price Extreme version of Century's popular CR6 race car, making their intentions quite clear for the rest of the season. The Nkomazi 400 was a race of firsts for many reasons. One of them was the debut of racing stalwart Chris Visser in the Premier Class T1 Plus. The Freiburg farmer debuted the new Redline Revo Plus and survived the tough route to record a fine 5th place finish for the new car. We were now nearing the business end of the race, with 3 Toyota Gazoo Racing Hiluxes and a lone NWM Ford Castrol Ranger, all still fighting for the top spot. So 4 cars, but only 3 steps on the podium remaining. When the flag was waved, it was a valiant effort from Guy Bartrell and Simon Vasey-Lyle, but 4th was as high as they'd get, missing out on the podium by just over 2 minutes. It was a day of mixed fortunes for the men who eventually ended up in 3rd. Janelle de Villiers celebrated his 51st birthday on the day, struggled to see after losing a windscreen very early on in Loop 1, and fought back to claim 3rd overall. All in a day's work for the Dakar veteran. So this left us with the battle for the win between NWM Ford Castrol's Gareth Woolridge and Boyd Dreyer and TGRSA's Henk Lategan and Brett Cummings. In the end, Woolridge drove an excellent race to reach the finish without incident, but Lategan was simply in a class of his own. It may have been a good decision to start the race from the front, but even so, the former champion was both fast and ruthless while he raced to his first victory of the 2023 season. 6.5 minutes and some change was the margin between Lategan in 1st and Woolridge in 2nd, with de Villiers coming home in 3rd. Bottrell narrowly missed out on the podium ahead of Visser and Trothui. One gets the feeling that with the sort of pace Lartigue on display here in Malalan, Rally Raid fans will probably have to get used to the sight of him on the podium, while Woolridge will want to go one better come the next race. Let's hear from them.
The guys that have been here before maybe dreaded it. I don't know if it sounded like some of the guys that have been here knew what was coming. We had no idea, and we did not expect that. I think it's the toughest national race I've ever done.
Yeah, I must say, I said to Dad earlier, we were the rose amongst the thorns there. Toyota in front of us and 2 behind us. But yeah, we had a good day. It was clean, no problems at all.
While the crews and teams regroup for the next race, the entire South African Rally Raid fraternity would like to take the time to honor the life of one of its true legends, Johan Horn. Although small in stature, was a larger-than-life character and an unselfish supporter of both the sport of Rally Raid racing and the greater Malalan and Mpumalanga area. The 2023 Nkomazi 400 will forever be remembered for the highs that the action-packed event produced, combined with the tragic news of Johan's passing at the same time. Strongs to the entire Horn family, including Tani Leone, as well as Johan Jr. and Vanna, who will most likely return to the sport at the next event. Rest in peace, Johan. The sport will miss you. All the action from the Nkomazi 400 was brought to you by Toyota, Ford and Pirelli, in association with the SARRC. This event was sponsored by Malalan Toyota.